Hey there. If you're a frequent listener to our show, you already know that our show is brought to you by our friends over at Artillery Sports. But what you may not know is that Artillery Sports helps athletes of all types win on and off the course and court. They do this by selling quality, durable, and precision manufactured sports equipment that keeps you in the game, while also using a portion of the profits to provide the funding needed to care for our nation's veterans. With Artillery Sports, it's more than just a game. So head over to artillerysports.com today to buy the quality equipment you need to keep you in the game and to help our nation's veterans at the same time. That's artillerysports.com. Make sure you head on over there today. Oh, and use the code DOCFIRST to get 10% off your first order. Welcome to Documentary First, an inside look at documentary filmmaking. I'm your host and a documentary filmmaker myself, Christian Taylor. And today I am joined with a couple of very talented filmmaking ladies. I'm just incredibly grateful to have them here on the show. Inbal Lessner is here with us, as well as her filmmaking partner, Cecilia Peck. You guys, I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come. It's really a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Now, I want to know, both of you are coming from different places. Where are you right now? Inbal, you look like you're in some sort of wonderful vacation land.
We both live in Los Angeles, but I am currently zooming in or calling from a rare vacation in Mexico. So thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. Where are you, Cecilia?
Probably the only 3 days out of the year she's not in the editing bay, but I am in LA.
You are in LA.
Yeah.
And I didn't read Cecilia's bio until, right before I was coming on here. And I didn't learn until then that she is the daughter of Gregory Peck, who is one of my favorite actors of my growing up and my high school time. So yes, Gregory Peck is your dad. I still can't get over that. I think it's just amazing. What a wonderful dad to have. So
thank you. I don't usually lead with that fact,
but
my dad was really committed to making films that dealt with social issues and fairness and justice. And I hope I'm following in his footsteps and trying to honor his legacy with the kind of work I do.
Clearly you are. And he certainly imprinted his spirit onto you. And so I look forward to getting to know you a little bit better in this interview. All right. Well, now I'm going to just kind of jump in. You guys are here, thankfully, because you are you're nominated for an Emmy for an episode of Escaping Twin Flames, which is on Netflix right now. And we are going to be cheering for you to win this Emmy. And so we're going to be shouting for you on social media. And we really want people to learn more about this this documentary series, and learn how it was made. So let's start right now by introducing who you are. And so I'll read your bios, and I have to tell you, they're pretty stunning. So everybody hold on to your hats. So Inbal Lessner, ACE, is an Emmy-nominated and Eddie-winning producer-editor who most recently cut together Sarah Gibson's Stormy, which would also be interesting to hear about. Executive produced by Judd Apatow. Inbal is most well known for such true crime hits as Stars Seduced, Inside the NXIVM Cult, and Netflix's Escaping Twin Flames, which of course she is now Emmy nominated for, both of which she co-created alongside her filmmaking partner, Cecilia Peck. As executive producer, showrunner, and editor, Inbal steered both shows towards nominations for Best Edited Documentary Non-Theatrical at the ACE Eddie Awards, nabbing a win for the latter. She was previously Eddie nominated for her work on the Can We Get Along episode of CNN's The 90s, which I have to say is one of my favorite. Her 5-year partnership with CNN culminated in a dream collaboration with the executive producer Tom Hanks, also one of my favorites, on the Golden Age episode of the movies. Inbal has worked in the cutting rooms of directors such as David Guggenheim, Nancy Schwartzman, R.J. Cutler, Kelly Duane, Trisha Reagan, Jeremy Simmons, and Tracy Tragos, as well as Natalie Portman's feature directorial debut, mouthful. A member of the AFI Conservatory faculty, she has also been a visiting professor of film editing at UNESCO?
Is that how you say
it? UNCSA.
University of North Carolina School of the Arts. It's their arts conservatory.
just taught me something new. Film school and mentor at the Karen Schmier Diversity in the Edit Room program. Diversity in the Edit Room program. Those are lots of things in there I did not know about. So I'm happy to dive into those more too. All right, Cecilia, we're going to focus on you for a second. Cecilia has a focus on women's stories and trauma-informed filmmaking. She directed, executive produced, and was co-showrunner of the Netflix documentary series Escaping Twin Flames. She was director, writer, and co-showrunner of the four-part docu-series Seduced Inside the NXIVM Cult for Stars. She directed and produced the Emmy-nominated Netflix feature documentary Brave Miss World and the Academy Award shortlisted documentary Shut Up and Sing. She produced A Conversation with Gregory Peck. Now I have to see this, obviously. A portrait of her actor and activist father. A graduate of Princeton University. She's also smart. She is the recipient of the Dart Fellowship for Ethics and Documentary from the Columbia School of Journalism and is a member of the documentary branch of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. I mean, we are here with some, beautifully talented and incredibly smart, obviously, ladies. And you are a power team here. And I would love to know how the two of you came together.
Okay, who's starting on that one?
I'm going to ask you. You start.
I think it was a mutual admiration society. I had seen a film that Inbal cut on the life of Simon Wiesenthal, and as I like to say, it was an archival film, a historical film, but it felt like it was unfolding in front of my eyes. It was so gripping and emotional and beautiful, and I really wanted to work with her. We had friends in common, and she can tell you the other part. She had seen a film of mine, and I think we
I
just saw.
just watched Shut Up and Sing, which I was blown away by. It has like the amazing trifecta of women, music, and politics, which I just couldn't get enough of, and I thought was really incredibly put together. And so we were looking for a project to do together.
That's amazing. Well, it's so wonderful that you found each other. I guess you just networked in LA, or did you write each other? How do you connect? This is one thing. My podcast is for people who are learning how to level up in their career, or want to learn how to get into the business. So you guys are fangirling over each other, and you want to work together. How'd you make that happen?
Well, we had mutual connections, but I think the idea is that if you find somebody whose work you love, just seek them out, and pursue it. I think we both felt that way, and neither of us gave up. And then a project came our way that was really good. It just seemed to make sense for both of us. So we embarked on it. That was back in the days of true independent filmmaking. We started shooting on a documentary that was partially financed, not really thinking ahead on how we would put the funding together to finish it. So it was a matter of scraping, $5,000 together to do another shoot, and there were long pauses. Inbal worked on other projects in between, but we both stayed with it. It took 5 years, and that was our film Brave Miss World, which was picked up by Netflix in rough cut. It was Emmy nominated. We understood from that one how incredible it is to be on Netflix, to really get your film seen. No, there's no audience like that, and we haven't worked for them since, at least together. So we were really excited to be back with them for Escaping Twin Flames.
That's fantastic. So you guys you've been working together for at least 5 years. Is that it? Or
well, since 2008. So my math is about 15 years.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because when you first came on, you were talking about how you usually end up wearing the same thing, which happened twice since I've seen you. You came on and then you both changed and you came back in the same thing. So you probably share a brain. You know each other very well. It looks that way from the show that I watched. I did watch the first episode of Escaping Twin Flames. If people that are listening to this have not seen it, I do highly recommend the documentary series. Just from what I've seen, it is a very well the story is what I think was so well stitched together. It is just very well layered, and it leads you from one thing to the next very effortlessly. And I am insanely curious for the next episode. If I didn't have this interview, I would have just sat right there and probably watched all three. So talk to me about the story. Where did this is, well, give me the log line first, and then talk to me about how this story came about.
Cecilia, you start with the log. You're so good at it.
Well, it's Twin Flames Universe is an online group that presents itself as a relationship coaching school for people who are looking for their true love. And they believe in the premise that each of us has a twin flame in the universe who's your soulmate or your ultimate lover, and that through taking their courses and workshops and books, they guarantee that they will help you get together with your twin flame. So that's the premise. And I think we look at what seemed initially so appealing and interesting and fun about it. The leaders of the group are young, they're a married couple, they're in love, and people who had been Googling, is there someone out there for me? Or is there such a thing as a soulmate or a twin flame? Land on their website, see this good looking, energetic young couple with similar people, young people in the group, on the Facebook group, all their faces, and it feels very welcoming and like a fun community. But our series breaks down how it turns into a very controlling cult that separates people from their friends and families, that forces you to adhere to their ideology, and that becomes ultimately incredibly dangerous.
Yeah. So tell me then how you got connected to this story. It had to have been somebody that you knew, or did you hear about it?
Inbal, do you
So
want to?
because we have done, I'll actually take it a step back because I think it might be interesting to your audience. With Brave Miss World, we realized that the outreach campaign around the film became bigger than the film itself because we designed it a certain way, with a lot of college screenings and community screenings, and we had a photo campaign of why I am brave, and the website became the number one Google search results for people wanting to share their stories of sexual assault and rape.
And
And
this was our 5-year indie film that we started on together about a rape survivor who became a Miss World and
yeah,
vowed
I'm
to.
going quite back in history. And so,
Yeah.
only all to say, but that by the time we did Seduced about the Nexium cult for stars, we had a sense that there needs to be a website, a central place for people after watching the show who want to get additional resources or wanting to connect or share more stories. And so, because we launched that website, we started receiving, a ton of emails and messages from people who have just left cults or family members who have loved ones trapped in cults. And we started hearing a lot of different groups and dangerous gurus. And the one story that really felt urgent and to make was about Twin Flames Universe, this particular cult.
Just to throw in, because I'm not sure if we delineated, our first website is bravemissworld.com. That's the one that has 11 million unique visitors for people sharing their testimonials about rape and sexual assault. Then with Seduced, we launched seduceddocumentary.com, and that's a space for cult survivors and people trying to leave cults or family members. And that website was what led us to Twin Flames.
I see. I see. That all makes sense. So now you have stumbled upon this new story and you're talking amongst yourselves and you see this urgent need. How does it develop from there? You have this idea. You now probably have, emails from people that have said, I survived this cult. And talk to us about how it all kind of started out, came together, how you got connected to Netflix for them to sponsor this, because there are several filmmakers out there I know who would love to make that connection as well. How did you do that?
Well, like Inbal said, we started hearing from survivors of this cult, and their stories were literally so horrific about being exploited, abused, including forced gender reassignments and even reassignments of sexual preference, complete isolation from family, labor trafficking, and sex trafficking. So we wanted to investigate was it a cult? How did this benign seeming relationship coaching school get to that point? So we spent about 2 years talking to people, interviewing survivors of the cult, accumulating these stories, reading everything we could, trying to understand how this group was operating.
2 years, that's a lot of research. You
Yeah,
dove
I
in.
Well,
mean,
we
if we could have
started
gotten into production sooner, I think we would have liked to, but it does take a lot of time to make sure you build those relationships very carefully, and then you start pitching, seeing who's interested. And we partnered with ITV, a Good Caper, which is a subsidiary of ITV America. And we knew by then that the story was pretty intense and had a potential to be, I guess, to make waves or to be commercial. And we pitched it to almost all streamers, and we got actually several offers, and we decided to go with Netflix.
That's wonderful. So when they give you an offer, can you talk us through the process of that? I know that when they give you an offer, you have the ability to accept it or not, but I know when you do, they then provide the funding for you, but they then own the property, correct? And I know you can't give specifics, but talk to us about that process as much as you can.
Inbal, do you want to talk about what materials we started to present to them and how we got
Yeah,
the
so
grant?
you have to have a pretty strong proof of concept. You have to put together a deck featuring all the quote unquote cast, but the survivors, the participants that are willing to go on camera. We also had other people who wanted to contribute that were not ready to go on camera, and that's okay too. And then we gathered all this evidence, so we were able to show that we have a mountain of videos from inside the group, um, emails, photos, other communication that really reveal, gets you a sneak peek in behind the scenes of what happens on the inside of this cult, which is key. And we put together a sizzle reel or a presentation tape. And so between that and our verbal presentation and the deck, I think there was enough materials there to have Netflix and have confidence that we can deliver um, a gripping show. We still had to, in order to get the green light, it's quite arduous process. You still need to write a scene by scene outline, sort of imagining how the story will flow from one scene to the next. A production plan, where will you film the interviews, where will you film other scenes, how you tackling the archival footage, what kind of recreations you're going to do. We have our own style of animated recreations. So they want all of it. They want to know that you secured access. I think access is number one, that you really have people willing to go on camera and tell these stories, that you have all the material around it to make it rich visually, and you have a good production plan and a good team. We hired a really strong team. What else, Cecilia?
Well, I think another issue is really the ethical challenges of our craft and making sure that these people who had been traumatized, who had been abused, who had been subjugated, that we weren't recreating any of those circumstances because they wanted to be part of a documentary. They want to help warn other women about the red flags of groups like this, but it's still, so, you can't predict how an audience will react and how it will affect their future. And people might think they want to go on camera and then later on want to back out, or maybe not want to say certain things they thought they would say. So I think part of our work is always keeping in mind, making sure that they're safe and that they do have a voice in how their stories are told, that they don't feel exploited or ashamed or embarrassed about what might be on camera. So that's definitely another whole aspect of our work.
I did feel like you treated the subjects with such tenderness and respect. So the people that you interviewed, I felt they seemed to come across like they were safe and that they were telling their stories very comfortably and not at all, and that they were definitely eager to tell their stories. So you did that
Well,
in a nice way.
thank you. But let's again backtrack a little. These are people who've come to the group with a relationship that didn't work out, or that failed, and this what Jeff and Shalia, the cult leaders, do is encourage people to go back and try to win that person again. That they say that maybe you didn't try hard enough, you weren't really in love with them, you didn't let them know. So what happened was, in many cases, people were started stalking former lovers that didn't want to be with them anymore because they were being pushed so hard. These cult leaders believed that they could make these failed relationship work. So that's hard to talk about. Nobody wants to admit that. And you're so caught up with it. You don't even entertain the idea of challenging what the leaders are telling you to do. They're encouraging you. You can do this. This is your twin flame. There's no one else in the universe for you besides this person. You have to go after it. And I think the first episode ends with one of the former members being arrested for violating a restraining order. So that was not something she was anxious to talk about on camera. So it took a lot of trust on her part and communication with us. How am I going to come across? Do you really need to tell this part of that story? But you can't shy away from how extreme it got. And tell the truth. And we're investigative journalists. So those were some of the delicate, the balances we had to be mindful of in, encouraging people to tell their story and creating a way to do it so that they felt safe.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Going back to,
let me
go
just
ahead.
add that I think having built our body of work, we were able to, they could really see that we're passionate about exposing coercive control and making them not just our subjects, but our partners. So we work together to both give them agency over their story and tell it in a way that will be compelling to the audience at home, that will provoke their empathy and sympathy, and will maybe help make a change, maybe help educate people, and maybe help bring this group to justice.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like, you were working as a team, a whole unified group to tell this story. It was beautiful. Going back to, how you brought this to life, when they greenlit your program, do you then get to pick all of your, everybody on your team, and or do they say, we want you to put these people on your team? Do they continue to review the progress all the way along and tell you what you need to do to, to edit or to change it? What's the level of control that you two have versus the people overseeing the budget have?
Well, Netflix, like other studios, typically get right of approval. So we do have the freedom to choose our own people. They might make suggestions, but ultimately we come up with the team we want to work with that happen to be available on the dates that we need to film or to edit. And then they do have final approval. And we've come across a couple of points where they were questioning a decision. We were able to convince them. Or so ultimately it's our show and our team and mostly our decisions. But it does have a lot of layers of approval, and you have to, I always think, like, there's a lot of money on the line, and they need to feel confident that we can deliver a worthy show that's going to get a lot of people watching and talking about it. So as long as you have the ability to inspire confidence in the studio, the
Inbal's
executive producers,
freezing a
the people
little.
you work with.
It'll
I'm
be
breaking
okay.
up. I'm
It's
so
okay.
sorry.
Maybe I'll.
It's okay.
Now we hear you again, but we're a pretty small team. ITV
Oh,
handled.
really?
Well, it's really the two of us. So ITV handled production. So the production manager is ITV, basically running, just making the shoots happen and helping us to negotiate deals with crew members. We had our amazing DP, Matt Chavez, who was Netflix approved, who traveled with us, who did like 95% of the shoots. Our incredible supervising producer, Morgan Poferl, who worked with us on Seduced, and she is amazing on set too, and keeping the environment supportive and safe. And she's incredible with trauma survivors, and also our associate producer, Nadine Bedrosian. But it was a pretty small team. And then Inbal selected our incredible dream team of editors. We also had a gender diverse team. Our researcher, our archival producers and researchers, Jesse Hart and Avery Fox, really helped guide us through the very sensitive trans content of our series. But yeah, it's lean.
That's really amazing that you were able to do such a complicated and intense series with such a small group of people. The interesting thing, I did go back and forth because I pitched a documentary series to Netflix not too long ago, and I struggled with the idea because my distributor said, yes, you definitely want to pitch it and that's the way you want to go. But my first documentary, I funded and then I have owned, and I've loved owning it because I cut out theatrical rights and I can take it anywhere and do whatever I want to do. It's my property. And when you have someone else pay for it, it's theirs and not yours. It's a silly thing, but did you feel that? I mean, you know what it's like to be an independent producer and own a property. And I mean, I don't know. Talk about that. Does that feeling exist?
I wish we could have both, but just the industry right now, when those studios and streamers commission the shows, they, at least with Netflix, they own all rights forever. And so, we're grateful to be associated, able to have this funding to make the show we wanted to make and to have the exposure to it, to have tens of millions of people around the world watch it and engage with it and respond to it. But yeah, we don't own it. It's
but I'm sure at the end of the day,
double-edged sword, right?
We did get a paycheck, which in independent film is not necessarily so. So it is kind of nice to be able to have a budget and pay yourself. So maybe that's a trade-off.
I think our show was relatively inexpensive for them to make. We had pretty limited number of shooting days and editing weeks, and it did very well on the platform. It was number one for quite a while, but yeah, like Inbal said, we love being on that platform. We are really interested in this issue of manipulators and coercive control and how smart people get drawn into groups like this. So that's why we make the shows, so that people will see them and maybe stop judging members of cults. I mean, documentary series watchers like to tweet, so we get to read thousands of reactions to our show. And it seems kind of split, like half of the reactions say this really broke down how convincing this cult was and how people could join a cult, and the other half kind of say, how could anybody fall for this? Those people are so weird and so crazy. And that is frustrating, I think, because our goal really is to break down coercive control and how systematic it is, and how cult leaders are able to manipulate smart people and change their way of thinking. But then the subjects we take on are very dramatic and very extreme, and sometimes that's what people remember.
Yeah. Well, my editor and I have had this discussion. I feel like the editors really should get a writing credit, because documentary filmmaking, I think the script comes together in the edit. In fact, when I was editing my documentary, I was writing and he was editing, and we were kind of doing that simultaneously. And in the end, I did give him a writing credit because I felt like he participated so much in the creation of the film that he deserved that. Talk to me about the editing process and how, the editing determines story.
Don't get me started because I won't stop. Thank you for crediting your editor this way. I really feel all documentary editors, for the most part, should get writing credits, and I have gotten writing credit on past projects um, when I was hired as an editor. And there's a lot of editing that happens every day. It's not just writing voiceover for a host. It's really working with existing material and selecting really careful moments and sentences and sometimes words to really distill the story, the emotion, to put it in a certain order, to try 50 different orders, to um, really understand the structure, the narrative structure of the piece, how you go back and forth in time, how you paint full arcs of characters from beginning to end. And on top of that, there's the craft of the actual edit and how you weave together all these different types of materials, not just the sit down interviews, but also verite scenes and archival footage from inside the cult and all these other documents and screenshots and social media assets, right? And then add to that our animated recreations. And how do you somehow mesh all of that seamlessly and into a compelling narrative? This is really high degree of excellent craftsmanship, and I'm super proud of our team that was able to do that and be recognized by our peers for that.
How many editors did you have on this series?
So we had 3 editors, and that's usually the way it's budgeted, an editor per episode, because they have to, in most cases, some series are edited by one editor from beginning to end, but we had to meet such a compressed schedule that we really had to work on all episodes concurrently. So I had 3 editors, Mimi Wilcox, Kevin Hebert, and Martin Bean, working on the 3 episodes. But the way we work is we don't just relegate each episode to an editor. It's really a 3-hour film that we work together on as a team. And so actually each of us, with me helping at it as well, took one story arc from beginning to end. And so each of us became an expert on one story, one survivor, and then we started weaving them together. And then we all help each other. If episode 2 has to go to notes for the network and it needs more help, I would constantly move our editors around and on different scenes and different episodes to try to make the most of our time and, handle this efficiently. And then at the end, Troy Takaki, ACE, was our 5th editor, joining us for some finishing. So there's 5 on our team.
So did anything surprising happen that caused you to tell the story differently than you envisioned it before you started?
Should I offer something?
Yes, please.
Well, and I think I love hearing this discussion about editors because they really are writing the story. Inbal and I also wrote, I think it ultimately was about a 35-page outline, 35, 40-page, very detailed outline, and we were adding to it as we were shooting, but it's still a hypothetical document. So the real crafting, the story unfolds, emerges in the edit bays. But a
And on
lot of
location. And on location.
and on location and I think with tight schedules like that, it's hard to plan for verite scenes because you sometimes need to shoot 2 interviews in a day plus B-roll, and there isn't really room. But we always tried to make room for instance, the mothers of children in the cult to meet each other and support each other and find out how they were thinking. And And then in our third episode, we have one of the subjects or participants who had a high rank in the cult, realizing that she had committed some moral wrongs to another person in the cult, and she wanted to make amends. So we were able to capture that meeting in real time and that apology that's incredibly moving. And they're both so brave to allow us to shoot it. So we had many things. One of the moms got a call from her child who's in the cult who hadn't talked to her in months while we were filming. So you always hope for those moments to happen and then get back to the Bay and figure out how to weave it into the story. And just to say, Inbal she has an incredibly flexible brain about how a scene can unfold or what scenes are needed or what we're going to keep and what's going to go. And it's just always exciting for me to work with her because I realize that she's not stuck on one way. She can think of 10 or 20 or more ways to cut a scene or to tell a story or to craft an episode. And she's really, I think, among the best editors.
That's so beautiful. Inbal, tell me something that you are that you think is amazing about Cecilia, because I'm sure there are many things. What are her strong qualities? What do you admire? What is she really good at?
Well, her compassion and her ability to connect one-on-one with the people she's documenting, with getting their stories and helping them feel heard and comfortable and invested in working with us as a team is really unparalleled. But there's also something to Cecilia where she's able to imagine things that I never think will happen. I was like, that's never going to happen. But sometimes, so she's the dreamer and I'm the realist. And sometimes you have to dream 100 in order to get 50, right? If you never dream, you're never going to get even half of it. And so she has this amazing ideas about all the things we can do. And it's like, we just can't, but some of it, somehow, the universe wields itself to Cecilia's whims, and a lot of it does happen to my great shock, and she just doesn't give up. There's something super tenacious on a level that I really haven't seen elsewhere, where it's just unrelentless, passion and drive and fire to get those stories told in the best way. And I will be like, okay, picture is locked, but she will still have an idea that she can't let go of. And okay, we're logging on Saturday afternoon on my home, logging into my home system, making that one last change because it's never locked. Doesn't matter, if it's locked, it's gonna be changed until she's happy with it. And I love when directors, as an editor, I love when directors push me to do my best work, that it's uncompromising, that it's really going to be the best version of the story. I'm really invested in seizing the potential of the footage. There was so much footage. There was over 1,000 hours of videos from inside the group. Those videos
That's
of those.
Alone. That's without you shooting anything,
Yes,
right?
there's
My.
so there's a couple more hundreds of original footage, but just from the cult alone, there was over 1,000 hours. None of us could watch it in our lifetime.
Wow.
So we really had to come up with strategies, work with Cecilia, work with the team, work with AI tools to figure out how do we really not give up. And so, Cecilia's fire is kind of contagious. We all work really hard to not leave any stone unturned, make sure that every piece of footage is explored, and we really dig in there to find the best examples to show in this case, the criminality in this group. We wanted to make sure that when you watch the show, when a law enforcement official or when a prosecutor watches that show, that case is ready for them. We've done our journalistic investigative work to the point where it's all been bulletproof checked, triple checked with different layers of lawyers and fact checked, that it's ready and it feels compelling, serious criminal documentation of criminal wrongdoing, and we really hope something is going to happen as a result.
Does that actually happen, that law enforcement will see documentaries like that and take action?
Mm.
I
Well,
mean, has
in the Nexium story, Maura Penza saw it in the New York Times, saw the story in the New York Times, and that's what started that investigation. And because those shows were out, I think there was public pressure to have an adequate sentencing. It was for Keith Raniere, the leader of Nexium. He got a completely unprecedented sentencing of 120 years in prison without having killed anybody. You know,
Yeah, I think the media can definitely put pressure on law enforcement. They don't look good if the story is on Netflix and nobody's investigating these
yeah,
crimes.
that makes sense. Well, I have another question for you. So I talked to you earlier about this concept. Now you're nominated for an Emmy for this third episode in this series. And I talked to my husband earlier, that you were nominated for an Emmy for editing. And he's like, well, how do you know the difference between, a show that's edited well and show that is not edited well, particularly in a documentary world. You can, with Matrix, not so hard, but with, documentary films, it can be challenging. So I was wondering if you can unpack that a little bit and then tell us some of the best edited scenes or the things you're really proud of, that you think show off your skills the best in your series.
Well, so first of all, quickly, just to explain that in episodic television, across the board, comedy, drama, whatever, you always nominate an episode and not the whole series as a body of work. So we decided to nominate our episode 3, which is the culmination of this big story, big 3-hour, what we see as a 3-hour film, really coming to an end.
We decided to submit that episode, and they nominated.
Right. We decided to submit it for consideration, and the Academy nominated it. That's right. And then I think, how do you know something is well edited? I think a well edited doc series is a testament for the excellence of the whole team. You can't be a great editor if you don't have amazing material from the field, if you don't have amazing research that led to that, what was shot and what was gathered in terms of the supporting materials. If you don't have an extraordinary animation company like Yakfu Studios that did our animated recreations. So you really have everybody, you have to have everybody be at the top of their game to end up in the editing room with the best materials so that you can have it all in your fingertips to, weave together. And I think if you're watching something and you can't stop, you don't want to pause, you don't want to go eat popcorn while you're watching or take another phone call or check your email, I think that you're watching something special. It's constantly engaging on the edge of your seat, and it's deep. So there's sort of combination of many different tones and moods. It's not flat. It's emotional, it's compelling, it's funny at times, it's horrific at times, and it's sort of a rich cinematic experience. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, one of the things that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think best editing shines sometimes when you can't see it. So in your first episode, I feel like it's almost invisible. There is this flow of the story where it's just one story flows into the next story and it's this logical step. You don't feel, it's not a jarring, you're not taken out of the story anywhere. You're not conscious of either the music change, any music jarring or any cuts or anything like that. You're just engaged in the story. There's nothing to distract you. And for me, good editing does that. It leaves you focused in the story and nothing is distracting you. Plus, it's almost like a good stew. You're taking the sound, you're taking the voiceover, you're taking the video, you're taking, any other animations, you're taking lower thirds, you're taking all of these elements that are, disparate and they're flying all around here. And as an editor, you have to figure out how you're going to weave these together into this magical, beautiful thing. And, I think when you don't see the separate pieces, that to me, I think is good editing.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of flow, seamless flow. And you're right that sometimes the best editing is the invisible art. There are a couple of really strong sequences in episode 3 that I think sort of editing aficionados or geeks may want to check out. There's a beautiful
Tell me
there's a
what that is.
beautiful sequence where the two moms who have children in the group who have transitioned while being estranged and in the group talk about those stories, their stories of how their children became estranged and how they found out about their transition in the group. And it presented a lot of ethical challenges and considerations for us. And we don't have enough time to really describe it in a way that will do it justice. But I'll just say that the way it was gently and with a lot of back and forth, we had many, many arguments and meetings about this, and we tried to find the exact right tone to tell those stories with a lot of respect to those cult members who couldn't give their consent for their stories to be told because they're trapped in the group right now. And we couldn't assume that we knew better than them what led them to this. So we had to be really careful about finding all the right pieces where we let them say in their own words in videos that we found that they filmed for the cult, and say in their own words that they were given this gender reassignment. They were told to be this way. They were initially knee-jerk reaction. They initially opposed this and rejected this, but then they came around to accepting because they went through the indoctrination exercises that this group uses to help changes people thinking and behavior. And with all of that, this sort of sequence culminates with Dr. Adair, a gender studies expert, who really helps us unpack that and put it in context, saying, yes, it is totally reasonably possible that cisgender women in the group decided to transition. However, something doesn't feel right here when you really sit and listen to the language and to them speaking. They're not saying, I chose this. This is my own expression. They say we were told to. This is what was expected of us. And so we had to be really careful building that sequence and making that argument, and sort of the whole series dependent on that moment to really nail that this is very nefarious and intentional. And I have other, favorite scenes, but I know we're running out of time.
But also just in the way we chose to begin every episode. There's no script for that. It's a blank slate. And we came up with an idea of starting each episode with a video from the cult that the cult had produced. So the first one starts with the cult leader bragging about a $60,000 Porsche, and he's giving you a tour of the Porsche and how cool it is that he has it. So you understand right away that these people are materialistic. They like luxury goods. So that information is delivered very quickly, and then it goes to a scene with one of the moms who talks about she's smoking, and she said, I had given up smoking, but when we got cut off from my daughter, I started again. It's a coping mechanism. So, you understand that there's a mom who's lost her daughter. She doesn't speak to her anymore and doesn't want to be smoking, but she is. And then, we got an incredible credit music, a song we licensed. So each episode, I think, starts off in a compelling way, and then you dive into what happened to these people and how they were convinced to, stalk their partners or cut off their families, and showing these videos of the pressure that they're under to conform. but every single moment is an editing choice,
That's
made
And I'll
by.
just say that keeping that cohesive tone across the entire series so that it feels like a 3-hour journey. And most people binge the show in one night. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
why Netflix
I
like to
would.
do
I
those.
probably will finish it this evening because I am curious. Like,
So
okay, what happens next? So, tell
let
me
us
what
know.
you are most proud of with this piece. Each of you can say your own thing.
I mean, for me, I think it's it's being ethical filmmakers and having follow through with our survivors and not abandoning them when the series is finished, and just making sure we've stayed in communication to honor their stories and their participation. And that's not just the two of us, but our whole team. I mean that, and being proud of hiring a team, an ethical team of filmmakers.
Wonderful. What about you, Inbal?
I'm on the same line. We were able to put together the resources. Cecilia really spearheaded that to bring all the participants who wanted to LA to watch the show just before it launched on Netflix.
Oh,
And they
that's
watched
nice.
it together with our production team and with our experts. And we provided extra resources there to support them. And they're all very proud of it. They stand behind it. Nobody's upset about the way they're portrayed. Nobody's questioning the ethical filmmaking or the choices we've made. But they all really feel part of the team, and we're all still working together to try to make sure it pays off and that the authorities do act to stop Twin Flames Universe. So
Oh, that's
I'm
beautiful.
hoping to be even prouder when that happens. But
Yeah, I'm
I'm
sure
very
if you had
proud
to
of
pick,
the
between an Emmy and between, them being exposed and arrested, there's no question there. There's absolutely no question there. I know why you did this work. I can see it. I can tell with both of you what you're passionate about. And I really do hope you will continue on your journeys because you're doing important work and you're doing it well. I really appreciate you taking time to, out of your day to share your stories with us and so that we can learn more about, the work you're doing. Do you think that you could share a bit of advice for our listeners about how they could grow in their own craft, either as an editor or a producer? You're in LA, you've grown your career there. Where people that are listening to this sometimes are still earlier on in their career. What words of advice do you have for people that are wanting to follow in your footsteps?
I'll have to quote Barbara Kopple. I'll jump in, but I'll let you end. I'll have to quote Barbara Kopple, who's a shared mentor to both of us. I interned for her, and Cecilia started. She learned documentary filmmaking with her and from her, and she says that the best way to get started, or while you're trying to make your own film, is to be a sound recordist or an editor. So if you can master those kind of skills and work on a lot of other productions as a sound recordist on set or as an editor, both of those positions give you a lot of sort of sneak peek or visibility of the process, and you get to see how the sausage is made, what kind of decisions people are making, what the process is really like behind the scenes, and you make a living, which is something people need to do while they're pursuing their own maybe independent projects or stories. Or so that I would echo that advice.
That's great advice.
It
Can
worked
you
for me. I've been
tell me
editing.
who that person is that you're recommending? I've never heard of her name before.
Well, I'll talk about her too, because she's also my filmmaking mentor and friend, Barbara Kopple. She's a two-time Academy Award winning female documentary filmmaker. She made her great film, Harlan County, USA, and won
I
another
know that
Oscar
one.
for American Dream. But she's how I started my career, and Inbal was working or interning or in her office at almost the
Both.
same time. But I think my advice would be to find somebody whose films you respect and go work for them. Whether you intern or do research or development or any job you can, to learn from somebody you admire. And I know Inbal mentors younger filmmakers too. I think I would say find somebody you respect and go work for them.
That's beautiful. Now, did you guys bring a documentary to share? Like your favorite one of a documentary to recommend? Yeah? Yeah?
I
Okay.
thought about one.
Great.
It's from
Hang on a second. We
okay.
have to go into our special segment. So, everyone, this is our special segment, DocuView Deja Vu. All right, Inbal, you're up. Tell us your documentary you're recommending today.
Well, my favorite is from last year, but it's Fire of Love.
Oh,
I absolutely love that film, and I was very fortunate to be invited to watch it. Uh, to be invited to watch it at the IMAX theater in LA, and so I got to see on a very, very huge screen that lava, and I could not get enough of it. I could see 3 hours of it. I just think the way it was crafted and edited and written was gorgeous, and I love that film.
I haven't seen it yet, but I have wanted to. So now that will give me an impetus to go and make sure I get it done. All right, Cecilia, you have one to share with us?
I mean, I think I will go back to the classic Harlan County, USA, because I think it's essential viewing for any documentary filmmaker. And our mentor, Barbara, embedded with a group of striking coal miners in Kentucky for a year. And you think you might not have anything in common, but you begin to relate to these people so strongly. And the women go on the picket line for their husbands who have black lung, and the way she became part of their lives, and you sense the camera there even when they're in danger. So yeah, I think that's a great film to watch for understanding the power of how embedding with a group of people that you might think you have nothing in common with can really share a story that's universal.
Beautiful. Well, ladies, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your talents, for this important work that you have done. And we look forward to seeing you back again with your next documentary. I'm sure there's one in the works. Uh, we'll look forward to seeing you back here. All right, everybody, this has been Documentary First, where we believe everyone has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it. Bye, everybody.